Welcome back to Deprogram. This is video number 95. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about Patrick Bet-David, and once again looking at to what extent is he also living as a Satanist. Just to quickly remind you, I myself have to admit that I spent a lot of my life living as a Satanist, and when I talk about this, at first it could sound like I'm just trying to be highly critical, and you could even say trying to put someone down. To say somebody's living as a Satanist, it comes across as being quite an insult, and actually that's not the way I mean it. When it was brought to my attention that I had been living as a Satanist, that was a huge blessing for me. That was a huge step on my path towards figuring out why we're here, the meaning of suffering. Of course, I didn't like having to acknowledge that, but once I realized that when you spend every waking minute of every day just thinking about yourself and your own close network, and you don't actually think of others in the broader sense. I mean, obviously we care about those who are close to us. That's almost the same as just caring about ourselves, because if something happens to them, it hurts ourselves. So contributing part of your life to the benefit of others who are not connected to you is something that a lot of people don't even think of doing. And until you actually realize the importance of living that way, it can be quite difficult to give life meaning, to connect with what makes at least good people feel positive and to put meaning into our lives. So as much as it's not nice to learn that about yourself, once you do accept that you've been living selfishly, which is what Satanism is, I look at it like this. When we think of God, the Creator God, the God of things that are good and pure, to me that force is aligned with love, with the feeling you get when you're connected to others. And then Satan is the opposer. That's what the word Satan means. So what's the opposer of love? What's the opposer of connection? What opposes having meaning in your life and doing what is right? It's the opposite of all that. So selfishness, greed, not considering others. As I've shown in previous videos, Satanism has nothing to do with the worshipping of a deity, of a little critter with horns. There is some spiritual aspect to it. They do get involved in rituals and some sick stuff, but in a broader sense, it's about egotism, about self-preservation above all else. Or as Marilyn Manson says, about being your own God.
In America, Satanism is sensationalized and kind of misunderstood, and people associate it with worshiping the devil and things like that. But it's really a philosophy about individuality and self-preservation. It's about, being your own God.
Really, if you look around at the world, there are a lot of people who live that way. There are a lot of people who never even give any thought to the idea of dedicating a part of their lives to the benefit of strangers, of people they'll never know or never see. And when you live that way, it is very difficult to find meaning in life. I mean, you can spend all your time and energy chasing money and achieve all kinds of material material possessions, just stuff. And when you're young, you actually think that's what you're here to do. And it doesn't take long before you realize that it's a very unfulfilling way to go about your life. Everybody does have to figure that out for themselves. And you do have to have a certain level of sort of physical, material success in your life to be able to have the freedom and the ability to serve others properly. So there is a balance there. But at a certain point, living for material gain, it doesn't add anything to your life. And you quickly learn that actually helping others who have no hope of achieving material success is a far more rewarding thing to do than just continuing to sort of add digits into a bank account, which you don't necessarily even need to spend. And so this has been a very valuable lesson for me. And that's why I don't hesitate to talk about other people who I don't want to insult. I'm not trying to really criticize or be hateful towards anyone. That's not my goal. What I'm actually doing here for people that are able to hear it, it's a gift. It's a service. I'm actually doing what I'm recommending other people do. I'm trying to be of service. And sometimes hearing hard truths can actually be the greatest service you can give to someone. It has been for me. And so we're going to come back to that shortly. But first, why bother doing this? And if you're on my channel, you'll know that I have spent over 2 years now trying to encourage podcasters to form an organization, to join forces in order to give themselves some real political power instead of working as useful idiots for politicians. They can actually harness the power that they have as genuine leaders to inspire movements among the people who actually choose to follow them. So, I've been working on that here the whole time. I've been creating videos, and today I have a very interesting update on the progress with that, which will be the first clip that I share with you. But just for anybody that's new here, why do I say podcasters forming an organization is such an important thing for them to do?
And I was thinking once, who's more powerful than kings and potentates, prime ministers and dictators? You've got it, the fourth estate.
And here's another example.
Is Les Leopold, co-founded the Labor Institute and is the author of Wall Street's War on Workers: How Mass Layoffs and Greed Are Destroying the Working Class and What to Do About It.
We need some sort of an uprising, that is structured. Not another, Tahrir Square, Arab Spring. We are the 99%. We need it structured. You need an organization that actually has the infrastructure to hold us together.
Okay, so as I've said many times, we need an organizational structure to hold us together. Podcasters could lead by example by them forming an organization, both those on the left and the right, which I think really is a ridiculous way of identifying people, because we're all just people, and whether you're on the left or the right really should have nothing to do with the fact that we are being ruled over by very evil people. And the politicians who we are forced to fund with our tax dollars are not serving us. And they're deeply evil people. And the people they work for are even more evil than the politicians themselves. So, we've got real problems. And that's become just in your face obvious ever since they launched the COVID hoax against us. And so I'm calling on podcasters to join forces and form an organization to give the people a voice. And why do I want the people to have a voice? Ultimately, that brings me to what my highest purpose is here. What is my goal? Why do I want the people to have a voice? Why do I want podcasters to join forces and harness the political power that they actually have, but they can't really exercise because they're not organized? To what end? And if I really had to narrow it right down to what is most important to me, what do I want to achieve in this lifetime? I want to see the men and women of the police and military understand why they were born into this creation, so that they can stop damaging their own spiritual progress. In other words, I want to help the people of the police and military to escape from the permanent cycle of suffering that they are locked in, that they have locked themselves in, and that they are actually locking the entire population of the world in. I don't believe that even a small fraction of them have really understood that it is their willingness to do violence for a paycheck that enslaves the global population to a tiny handful of the world's most evil. You can't even call these monsters people. We're talking about, this death cult, the people behind central banking. I mean, they're not even people. They literally believe they are gods and that we are here only to serve them, and they want to be rid of us. That's why they've been running eugenics operations for hundreds of years. Cops, soldiers, they don't know this. They have no idea that when they go out onto the street and risk being shot to harass road users, to harvest money from innocent, road users for fines, and when a soldier picks up a gun and goes and shoots someone on a battlefield, this is all just about stealing wealth for the world's most evil monsters. They don't realize this. And when they do realize this, they can finally see that what we need is a new social contract between the police and military and the people. Once we have that new social contract between us and the police and military, politics won't be necessary. It will be the greatest gift to save the police and military from being used as cannon fodder for the people who control politicians. Politicians are just a parasitic institution that just feed off productive people, and the world doesn't need them. We don't need them. They are a parasite on all of us. So why should we put up with that? We are the many. We have the power. We can have everything we want exactly how we want it because we are the many. If we were the politicians, just a handful of people controlling billions, that would be a terrifying position to be in, because at any moment in time, the people can just say enough's enough and just get rid of them in whatever way we want. And we might have to go to war against the armed forces, but even if we did, there's too many of us. There would be a lot of bloodshed, but we get our way. When we decide we want something, we will get our way. And what I'm trying to say here is that there is no need for violence. We can have things the way we want them just by using the truth and by, above everything else, having a way of organizing our numbers, a way of putting our voices together. And that's where podcast media is just the most important thing in the modern day. And of course, this has been proven by the results of the recent US elections. It's very clear that people like Patrick Bet-David and Joe Rogan and podcasters generally were the reason that Donald Trump got elected. I think it really showed people where the power is. It's not with politicians, it's with the people who are the actual leaders of our time. To be a leader, you can't force people to follow you. Leaders are leaders because people choose to follow them. And so all these podcasters that have hundreds of thousands and millions of followers are leaders. And the point that I was getting at about police and military, ultimately what it comes down to is they have to stop stealing property from people. If they were stealing property from people and it was making them rich themselves, I might not feel as though there's any point in me even doing this, because my voice and even the voices of all the podcasters in the world come together would not be enough to counteract that enormous wealth gain. But the fact of the matter is the police and military don't even get to keep any of that wealth. They steal the property from people. I'm talking about people who can't afford to pay their mortgages and they have to move out, or a lot of the time the banks don't even get the opportunity to take the property from people because people will just pack up and sell and end up homeless just because they believe the police will come and steal their property. So we need the police and the military to come out on mainstream TV and tell the world that you're safe, your debts are cancelled, your debts could never be paid anyway because the currency doesn't exist. So your debts are cancelled and nobody's going to take your property. Your properties belong to you. We're starting afresh. We're using precious metals. This is what needs to happen. And we are the many. We can make that happen. We get to choose what happens. And that's what is the best thing for us. So that's what we need to work towards. And that's what I've been trying to encourage podcasters to work towards, but together as one powerful political force. And I'm finally able to give you an update on that. Nobody still responds to me. Nobody tells me that they've been thinking about my idea. They don't offer one word of encouragement, nothing. It's actually so weird that not one person will say to me, oh, a couple of people have spoken negatively, like trying to tell me that people can't work together, but they're just people that don't understand people. They don't understand life. They don't understand that we are a social creature. Just because we're all divided right now, this is not our natural state. We are a social being, and working together is what we do best. And that's been proven by any time there's a natural disaster and things like that. We come together and we show how well we work together. And so I know what I'm saying is very logical and eventually it has to happen, but it has been very strange to me that nobody will respond to what I've been trying to say to them. It's really weird, especially when I show you this clip that I'm about to play for you. You've got to wonder, well, if this is where people are at, why would they not just say something to me? Like, why would they not communicate to me that they've heard what I've been saying? Just as a side thing, have a look at the table that they're sitting at. This is a card table. I grew up with these tables in my house my entire childhood. So check this out.
Here's the other prediction to be thinking about. You'll remember this. For sure you'll remember this. Do you remember during COVID, there were guys that are doing lives 3, 4, 5 times a day, and they're killing it, growing exponentially. Some of the guys got 100,000 subs in a month, right? And G5, was it G5? Yeah, G5 and COVID and market and the next stimulus, reaction to the next stimulus, reaction to the next stimulus. Stimulus changed. G5 changed. They disappeared. What are you going to react to now? So it was a Trump and Kamala and RFK and Tulsi and November 6th. A lot of talent. They're scared shitless. Because guess what? You know what November 6th is going to happen? People are going to say, I'm freaking done with politics. I don't want to know nothing else. Give me a year or 2 year break. I'm not interested. You're going to see a lot of the content creators that are doing talent individually. They're going to join teams and alliances. That's going to happen November 6th when they're going to think about it. Now, they may not execute on it till March, April, May, June, July of next year because they're like, no, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. They're going to experience that. Not everybody, not you guys, but a lot of people are going to be doing that.
So what do you think about that? They're going to join teams. Not exactly what I had in mind, but I just think it was funny. First of all, the way he said when they're going to think about it. The people that I've been writing to have been thinking about it for at least 2 years, or depending on when they started paying attention, at least a year. Anybody that I haven't been writing to probably hasn't been thinking about it unless they've been networking. And I had to think about this a lot before coming to talk about it because, well, I didn't really know how to look at it, if it's good or bad. And overall, I think it's a positive development, but it's definitely not what I had in mind. Actually, it's in some ways the opposite of what I had in mind. But I don't think that's a problem because things will play out as they need to. When these podcasters are talking about this, so many of them will come together, and at a certain point they'll realize that it needs to be bigger and it needs to be bigger. And I do believe that eventually, for their protection, so that they can't be taken out by censorship and criminal politicians, they will need to form one organization. I can't say that that's what's going to happen. Maybe they will try to form separate organizations. But if they do that, what will end up happening is the people who encourage the masses to buy into politics will just become what we now see the mainstream professional paid liars on TV as. The way we look at them will be the way that anybody who encourages minds to follow politics, they'll be seen as essentially the enemy of the people. And in the area of podcast media, there are many who know that, and then the biggest ones who have the biggest followings, they actually believe that they can continue shuffling minds into politics. And they'll get away with it for a while, but there'll come a point where they will be viewed as the enemy of the people. And they'll see that coming. I think they can already see that coming. When Donald Trump shows everybody that... this has been really shocking to me. On the topic of Donald Trump, briefly, there are a lot of people that actually believe his campaign promises. And I feel like I'm living in an alternate reality or something. How many politicians do you need to see making campaign promises to know that it's all bullshit? Everything they say is a lie. Actually, if they promise it to you on the campaign trail, you can be pretty sure it's a lie. If you've got any memory at all, if you pay any attention to what history has shown you. But no, people think he's sincere. People want to believe. I don't blame them, but it's leading the world to doom. I mean, at some point you've got to face the reality. And so if podcasters are going to join teams, that's basically the divide. You're going to have those who support politics, who will soon become the enemy of the people. And then you've got those who know that politics is a massive big scam and it's a parasitic institution that just harvests the wealth from innocent victims. And for politicians to survive, we have to suffer at the hand of violence and theft. And there's just no place for politics in a civilized world. We are living in the dark ages. We have tyranny, and we need to grow out of that. And I believe podcasters play a key role in helping that to happen because they have the voice to reach the masses. So I think this is a positive development. I think it's probably happening a little bit more slowly because you've got these big names who have millions of subscribers who don't want to join with the smaller names who don't have that support base. But if they don't, they will eventually be seen as the enemy of the people. And if they wait for all that additional suffering to build up, it's going to be very hard to forgive them. They're probably going to pay a very high price for that. And I think this is going to become apparent to them. I think if right now they're at the point of forming separate organizations, that's not a bad thing. It's just that they're not there yet. It's going to take a little bit more suffering, a little bit more pain, a little bit more hopelessness, a little bit more poverty and violence and crime and misery. And eventually they'll see that to have the real influence that they want to have over the world, they have to narrow it down to one team, and that team must be against politics. And so we're not there yet, but I'm pleased to be able to report this, that at least there is some progress being made. Now, before we go on to the next clip, just to finish on what I was saying about how bizarre it is that they don't communicate with me. And so I've been thinking about why. Why would that be? And if I think back to like around video 40, as you guys will know, I sent that to a list of podcasters, and Jordan Peterson was among them back at that time, and nobody was responding to me then. And if I think back to then, I think any podcaster that would look at my work then would just think to themselves, he's got a lot of work to do. Just leave him be to keep going. There was nothing really to say to me. If anything they could say could not really be very nice because I was hopeless. Anybody who starts making videos is going to be pretty hopeless for like the first 50 to 100 videos at least. And so then in more recent times, why would they still not respond or share their thoughts on how they feel about the idea? And well, one reason could be that they can see that I'm trying to be of service. Like they will know that I get no benefit from this unless it actually happens and works in the way that I'm predicting it will work. That's the only way that it will work out well for me. And in saying that, my point is that they will know I'm on their side. I'm trying to help them to improve their situation and everybody else's. It's obvious that I'm trying to be of service here, so they would not want me to come under attack. And certainly what I'm doing could invite attacks from the world's most evil people because they're the people I'm trying to disempower. If they were to respond to me and I was to start sharing with you what they were saying to me, that could help me to get more views and reach, which could bring attention onto me. And they're probably thinking they want me to not get much attention until these things come into our reality, until these teams actually come out. I've sort of felt that way all along. That's why I haven't been too fussed about sharing my work extensively. Like I've thought about hiring a producer or a social media manager, and I even placed an ad, but I've had no luck with it, and I've not really been worried about it because I know that things have to happen in their right time, in their right order. And so I imagine they're probably wanting to keep me small and quiet until they've had a chance to get this organized. And so that's one of the reasons I think they probably don't respond to me. But there's another reason that I was flicking through shorts, which I really hate doing. I'm telling you, watching YouTube shorts or TikTok videos, I've never watched TikTok in my life, but it's very unhealthy for your brain. I can feel that when I do it, it wrecks my concentration. When I want to go back to watching long form videos, I feel this tendency to want to flick off, to just want to move on to something else. And that's from watching YouTube shorts. Be warned about that. It's a way of deteriorating our learning ability. Just be aware of that, because they're doing it on purpose. That's why shorts exist. It's social engineering, and you've got to try to fight against it. Try to, build your concentration so that you can watch long form content without feeling the need to be distracted. I think that's very important. But in one of the times I was flicking through shorts, I found this.
Your ability to speak freely is directly proportional to your level of influence. The more influential you are, the less you can be honest with your people and say what you want to say. Every big celebrity, A-list or big influencers that are huge, they don't have controversial views ever. I give you an example. Kai Cenat will never tell y'all where he stands on Israel-Palestine. He's never going to talk to you guys about feminism. He ain't never going to talk about that shit. He's going to just keep it simple, content that's kind of mindless, that's going to be entertaining. That's what they focus on.
He didn't speak very clearly, so I'll just play it again for you.
Your ability to speak freely is directly proportional to your level of influence. The more influential you are, the less you can be honest with your people and say what you want to say. Every big celebrity, A-list or big influencers that are huge, they don't have controversial views ever. I give you an example. Kai Cenat will never tell y'all where he stands on Israel-Palestine. He's never going to talk to you guys about feminism. He ain't never going to talk about that shit. He's going to just keep it simple, content that's kind of mindless, that's going to be entertaining. That's what they focus on.
This is amazing to me. I had never considered that could actually explain why nobody will respond to me. I mean, if anyone in podcast media was to do anything, even just write an email to me, any personal communication between me and them, and I was to publish it and it was to help me grow, they could very well think that might encourage me to stop speaking openly about people the way that I do. Because when you have practically no following, you don't really have to hold back from what you say about people. I mean, what this guy says is very true. I can totally understand how once you've got a lot of people following you, you're not going to want to alienate anyone, and you're going to hold back what you say. And this puts me in a very interesting situation, because anybody who knows me knows that I can't help but speak what's on my mind. I can't even suppress it if I try. I mean, I think I'm an unusual case, because if it comes to privacy, I can just stay silent about anything. But if it comes to current events and politics and things that we are all involved in anyway, a lot of people might not want to be very open about things because they'll think that whoever they're speaking to might feel differently. This is not something that I suffer from. I mean, I remember when my dad would take me to go and vote. Well, we'd go together because we were in the same, on the same roll that you have to get marked off of. And I was so annoyed about having to waste time going to this stupid thing that I walked in and there's all these people around handing out these flyers and rubbish, and I started saying out loud, how do I vote for Pauline Hanson? Where's the thing for Pauline Hanson? In Australia at that time, the propaganda had everybody thinking Pauline Hanson was a racist and she had a very bad reputation. It was all based on propaganda. And I have no problem saying things that are going to make people dislike me. If somebody doesn't like my outlook, that's fine. I probably won't like theirs. Doesn't mean they shouldn't say it. And I think this is just such an interesting thing, because I imagine these podcasters who have been listening to what I've been saying and talking to each other about it, they might predict a time when I will start censoring myself. And I just can't imagine that happening. This is the kind of thing where you would need to hear from, like, one of my friends or one of my sisters, or you can't really take it from me, but I'm able to criticize people without becoming their enemy. We're all able to do this. You just have to practice. And so I don't hesitate from criticizing people, because I know that it doesn't have to be the end of the world. It doesn't mean that we're enemies. It means that there's something that we have to discuss, and we might not be understanding each other clearly, or there may be some reason why we are opposed to each other's views, but that doesn't mean you don't say it. That just means you have to speak more. As the saying goes, the answer to negative speech, or speech we don't like, is more speech. And so I think having arguments and conversations is a very important part of life. Actually, in this video that I'm reacting to now, that's actually something that Patrick Bet-David says, that the battle of ideas is how you get to the truth. It's very much true. So my point is that explains why nobody would want to support me in the least bit, because one of the results of that could be that I might stop speaking as openly as I do. And obviously I'm going to publish this video. It's going to be on the internet. I'm not going to be deleting it. And that's why I'm saying in this video, I don't think that could happen with me. I just don't see a day where, for the sake of not upsetting people, I'm going to hold back what needs to be said. I just don't. It's not in me to do that. It's not something that I practice doing. I don't think it's a good way to be. I think it's a deceitful way to be. If you feel a certain way about someone or something that they're saying or doing, if it's important and it relates to something that you're involved with, you have to say it. That's the only way that you can be true to yourself. When you hold stuff back because you're worried it's going to give you, a thumbs down or unsubscribe or whatever. I mean, I don't want people on my channel that give me a thumbs down, because I do all of this for nothing. It costs me actually a lot of money that I could be making doing things like working. It's a huge expense for me making these videos. So for, mindless trolls to come along and thumbs down the work that I do here, like, I'd love to see them face to face and see what they want to say to my face, because if you're not grateful for the effort that I'm putting in here, then you need to fuck off. I don't want you here. That's the way I see it. I don't have a problem with thumbs down or even I've had the same person unsubscribing and resubscribing since I had 100 subscribers. It's the same person. I know who's doing it. It's like, I don't care about that. That's not why I do this. If I was doing this for subscribers and likes, I would have quit this a long time ago. I see this as like a place to air my thoughts, to share my thoughts, and just getting stuff off my chest and putting it out to see what other people have to say, and to hear what other people think about what's going on in my head. That's how this serves me. If it was all about subscribers and likes, man, I would have given this up such a long time ago. This is way too hard to for somebody like me, who is only interested in bringing an end to slavery, the slavery of government, the slavery of politics, the crimes that politicians commit, the things that I talk about, trying to grow an organic following. It's like way too hard to do it if you're interested in just feeding your ego. You're going to starve to death if that's what you're after. So, but what I've come to realize is just having a place to air my thoughts and put my ideas out. It's very valuable for my internal growth, for my spiritual progress. And as you'll know, I talk about spiritual things quite a lot. But so, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. I think there's some very interesting reasons why nobody's communicating with me. Before we go on to the next clip, I'll tell you one thing about Patrick Bet-David. I actually contacted him through his app Minect. And the first response he gave to me was recommending that I start a podcast. And I thought this was just so funny because he knows that I have a podcast. He knows that I'm the one that encouraged him to join teams. And so why would he tell me if I have this idea that I need to start a podcast? He wanted me to think that he's not heard anything that I've said. Why is that? I honestly don't think it's anything, I don't think there's any malice behind it. I think there's, as I said, the first reason is probably he just wants me to keep going and improve on what I'm doing. And I guess what I'm suggesting, it will be world changing. So podcasters will want to keep it on the down low until they're ready to come out to the world. And I'm really the only person who can expose it, and I can't expose anything because this is a small platform. And even when I post a video, like I've got 600 subscribers, but I won't get 600 views. I'll get a couple of hundred. So the secret is safe with me, is what I'm saying. And I think that's why I'm sure over time all these questions will be answered. I mean, it keeps my mind active trying to figure out what's going on, because nobody will drop even a clue for me, which is it's really weird. I'm sure it's all going to make sense in the long run. And I want to get on with reacting to this video. In this next clip, Patrick talks about people who have had a vision. By sharing a great vision, they can get a lot of people to follow them. And this is what I've been trying to do. This is the whole point to what he's pretty much describing exactly what I've been trying to do here. Check it out.
If you ever read the book, The Art of Seduction or 40 Laws of Power, have you guys read those two books?
No.
Okay. One of the things he talks about is cast a vision or a dream so big that seems unbelievable. Most people run through the wall for it to think it's possible that one day it'll become a reality. There's power in selling a massive vision or a dream. The greatest leaders of all time that created a massive following, they were very good at doing this. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean 100% of the dream or the vision became a reality, but they definitely created an army behind it. Some of them did. Some of them didn't. But hey, by the end of the decade, we're going to land on the moon. Now, you either believe we didn't land on the moon and it was a movie, Fly Me to the Moon, or you believe we did. But either way, the story of we're going to land on the moon, what is that? A massive vision. Oh my God, we're going to do before Russia. This is awesome. John F. Kennedy, let's go, right? It's exciting. So there's a part of it, but man, you need a lot of years of people being on the same page together.
This is where I'm finding meaning in my life, is by painting this vision that we actually can live in a golden era. We don't need to pay taxes. We don't need to have bank debt. We don't need to have poverty. We live on such an abundant planet that everybody can have all the material resources that they could ever want. And the way that will work is all the wealth that the 1%, it's actually a fraction of 1%, that all what they harvest out of the population of the world, all that wealth will be evenly distributed across everyone, the moment people understand and accept and live by the law that our creation is built on, it's just as simple as understanding the law that underlies the fabric of all our lives, that we are not to murder, rape, assault, trespass, thieve, coerce, or deceive anybody else. That's it. That's the law. That's the whole of the law. When police and military live by that law, there will be nobody to thieve all the wealth into the hands of the bankers. And even if politicians and bankers were allowed to live free, even if they were allowed to hold on to their ill-gotten gains, which I do not think we should tolerate, but even if we were to go along with that, all the wealth of the world will still become evenly distributed the moment police and military understand and live by God's law. Because that's how our creation is made manifest according to that law. It's the fact that people don't understand it and don't live by it, that we're all slaves to bankers and politicians. But that slavery ends when people understand right from wrong and live by it. And I focus especially on the police and military because they're the ones that break that law in the most egregious ways, the most often, and they are the leading edge of the slavery system, and they don't even know it. If they knew what they were doing and they were profiting from it, we'd have a whole different story here. But they don't even realize what they're doing and what it's causing. And so that's my mission here, is to get that message across to them so that we can see wealth evenly distributed across everybody. That's what will happen. And it will be the beginning of a golden age. And it actually is, it's the one of two paths. We really are in a time when we're approaching like a fork in the road. We go towards tyranny and complete overt slavery. Once we submit to a digital ID and we submit to trading in a central bank digital currency or any digital currency, we are then slaves, and it will be, like, we are overtly slaves. We're already slaves, but it will be an overt system of slavery, and it will be almost impossible to undo it, especially knowing that they're building all these robots. Even if cops do wake up at that point, it will be too late because they're not going to be able to fight off these robots. I mean, have a look at what these things can do.
Mark! Mark!
Autonomous weapons, also known as killer robots, are military robots that can search for and aim at targets autonomously based on pre-programmed instructions. And almost every technologically advanced country in the world is working on developing these robots. Indeed, a senior executive at a Chinese defense company stated that future wars would not be fought by humans and that the use of lethal autonomous weapons was inevitable. However, having these weapons poses numerous risks. What if they go rogue and kill innocent people? What if they can't tell the difference between their targets and innocent people and kill them by mistake? Who would then be held accountable for the situation? An even bigger issue would arise if these killer robots are developed by governments that have no regard for human life. Then destroying these robots would be quite difficult.
We already know that no government has any regard for human life. That's what the COVID scamdemic proved to everybody. We already know that now.
An even bigger issue would arise if these killer robots are developed by governments that have no regard for human life. Then destroying these robots would be quite difficult.
Pay close attention to how stupid these people are. Look how they mistreat these robots. Throughout this video, you'll see how the robots are careful not to attack the men. And these men think that that makes them safe. They are completely oblivious to the fact that when it really counts, the only people who will be safe from these robots are the bankers and possibly the politicians. So these stupid men are actually building and training machines that have the capacity to destroy all of us. And I would just love to ask every cop and every soldier what makes them think that people like the central banking families and the evil politicians who just killed millions of people with their injections, what makes the police and military think that these evil monsters who are ruling over us don't desperately want to replace them with these machines? It's plainly obvious that we live in a world where bankers and politicians are racing towards creating an army of these things to enslave us. If you can't see that that's the world that we live in, then I really don't know what to tell you. If you want to pretend that they're going to have these robots working for us to protect and defend the average people, you know, you're living on another planet. That's not where the human civilization is at right now. We're in a dark place.
Do you want to destroy humans? Please say no.
Okay, I will destroy humans.
No, I take it back. Don't destroy humans.
That's one road, and we're actually on that road. If we don't organize some massive interventions, that's where we're going. But then we have free will. We can choose to go a different way. We can organize ourselves to all choose together to go a different way. And that's what I'm mapping out here. That's the vision that I'm trying to paint for people. And it's not like an imaginary thing. It's actually the way our creation was intended to be. The fact that we've suffered these dark ages for so long, it's a huge failure. It shouldn't be happening. Up until the point of having the internet, you could sort of see how things were going to go the way they're going. But once the internet became available and we could all share information, that era had to come to an end. And we're in that now. We're right approaching that intersection where we have to choose to make different decisions. And so as we go through this video of Patrick talking to these two guys, I've never seen this channel before. It's a new channel to me. It's funny that they're sitting at a card table. It brought back some memories. But in this exact video, I can see that we're still in that fearful, primitive state where we want to have teams and follow political leaders. Like, we have to outgrow that.
Cast a vision or a dream so big that seems unbelievable. But man, you need a lot of years of people being on the same page together.
He's absolutely right. You do need a lot of years of a lot of people being on the same page together. This is why we have to be rid of politics. You cannot have these puppets just tag teaming each other every few years, and then hidden behind them is a group of criminal multi-billionaires and trillionaires who literally direct everything that every politician does so that they get their will to play out. So what politics does is it creates a front for the real rulers, the royals, the Rothschilds, this death cult of evil bloodlines who direct the trajectory of human life for everyone. They don't do it up front. They do it through corrupt politicians. This system is rubbish. It's had its day. There is no room for this system in a civilized society. If you want to stay slaves and become really deeply enslaved, try to hang on to what we've got. If you actually want to allow human life to play out as it was intended by our creators, then we have to do away with this ridiculous political and economic systems. They need to be ended. And we need a lot of people behind that. And we need all those people to get behind that for many years. That, what he said there in itself, he's actually telling us that we need to get rid of politics. But throughout the rest of this video, I'm going to show you how he's just totally bought into politics. So what's going on here? We're going to go over that. But just to finish that point about having a lot of years and a lot of people behind a movement, that's what Russia does. That's what China does. I don't think that's what we should be looking to, but at least by not having a ridiculous system of these puppets changing hands every 5 minutes, they are able to set the agenda and move in a direction that they want to move in. The Western world is just being destroyed. And, before we go on to the next clip, I'll come back to Patrick Bet-David in a minute. I just want to share something with you about the direction that this death cult is taking the Five Eyes nations. Henry Kissinger, as a representative of this death cult, played a major role in helping China to become the manufacturing powerhouse that it is. And I think it would be quite safe to speculate the reason why is because the Chinese are much more compliant, subservient people. They tolerate being ruled over much more easily than the rest of us. I'm not being racist. I'm just sharing my observation. And for that reason, the eugenicists, they don't want the white people in the world. They are wanting to spread the Chinese system globally. That's the agenda. It's been known about for decades. It's called the Kalergi Plan. You can look it up. It's not a conspiracy theory. You can actually see it happening. When you look at the fact that the Chinese are being encouraged to stick with traditional values, get married, procreate normally, and the West is being encouraged to turn to transgenderism and homosexuality, you can see it. That's what they're doing. It's social engineering. They're trying to breed out white people because we resist. They want the whole population of the world to be like Asian people so that they will just be subservient worker slaves. This is what they're doing. You can see them doing it. And I just wanted to point out how people that are considered, highly intelligent still have no clue what's going on.
Something that I'm going to find very fascinating when I'm older is comparing how different societies have faced this demographic issue. And people like to do stuff like, let's say, blame the left or blame Jews. And I'm like, you can trace a lot of this stuff in China. And so if a lot of these same trends are happening in China, it's not the Jews' fault. And because
that's really interesting.
Thank you.
I've not heard anybody say that before.
I invented the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, you sure did. It's important to point out, however, that this Sabbatean Frankist death cult are not real Jews. They hide behind Judaism. They are actual satanic Luciferians, dark occultists, and they have total control over every Western politician in all Five Eyes nations.
But in China, and this is, again, something we need to talk about as a society, but we don't. The government is going full authoritarian. And so I can see this as the parallel between the Western world and the Eastern world, where in the West, the government enables it. Well, in China, they go against it, where, for example, they've banned playing video games for too long in China. They've banned women wearing bikinis or like porn or like even cleavage in movies because they don't want men to, they want to force men to like get married and like go out with women in order to see boobs. And the Chinese government also has banned homosexuality. So what you're looking at, China versus America, the Western world, the government enables the mouse utopia. In China, the government actively pushes against it using authoritarianism. And so you can see the cultural manifestations of the same underlying trend where everything I talk about, the psychological Black Death, demographic crisis, inequality, it's happening at the same time in both China and America. But no government today has the mental capability to understand what's happening, because if they did, we wouldn't have the crisis.
I know that Tom Bilyeu sees this Rudnick guy as being, highly intelligent, but how on earth does he think that?
No government today has the mental capability to understand what's happening, because if they did, we wouldn't have the crisis.
Like, you would only say something like that if you actually believe that politicians and the government is here to help you. And I mean, didn't we grow out of that a little while ago? I never even did an internet search until I was 35 or 34 or 35 years old. I never even used the internet one time until I was breaking up with my girlfriend and she showed me how to look up pornography. I think I was 34. So the internet is very new to me. Compared with someone like him, he was obviously using it long before I was, and he still thinks this.
No government today has the mental capability to understand what's happening, because if they did, we wouldn't have the crisis.
I mean, come on, look around. And so now the host on this show is going to ask Patrick Bet-David where he sees the United States going in the next 10 years. At first, Patrick talks a lot about politics, which we're going to come back to. It's very disappointing, but we all just have to be patient sometimes. He'll get there. But then he goes on with something else that is actually speaking for me. He talks about how the pandemic affected young people, and it's exactly like how my childhood was affected by this rotten system of violence and coercion and theft and what innocent people have to tolerate with this rotten system. And he's right. There's going to be a lot of young people fighting against it. And it's all the more reason why people like Patrick want to get on their side before they come up, because if he wants to keep shuffling minds into politics, I don't think it's going to work out well for him. But have a look, see what you think.
Where do you think America's headed over the next 10 years?
It's after the election. You're watching this Trump one. J.D. Vance becomes enemy number 2. Elon Musk is enemy number 3. Trump is going to be enemy number 3. So it's going to be Musk, J.D. Vance, then Trump. So then the establishment, they're not going to go after Trump because Trump is just 4 years. They're going to go after Eric, Jr., all the other family members. So you just have to know who the enemy is going to go after.
So did you hear that? Patrick actually thinks that Trump, Vance, and Musk are on his side.
That's who's going to get targeted. Crystal clear. Those are the people. And maybe I would put, certain people in the top 10 list. A Vivek would be on the top 10 list, certain other people. Maybe not Bobby. Bobby is going to be 74, 75 years old. Maybe they're going to go in a different direction. Bobby's going to play a role, but they're going to target some of those guys. Trump wins. The way J.D. Vance has proven himself as a great VP selection, and Trump gets credit for this with Peter Thiel and Don Jr., but ultimately Trump for choosing him because it's his call. JD has proven he's ready to be a president.
Now that, they basically did what they did with the COVID era policy, which was to, in August and September of 2019, when the repo market explodes, Trump gets together with his money manager, Larry Fink, and they come up with a plan of basically how to get all this money to go right to Wall Street, not to Main Street. And then they crush demand and lock down the country and push these, deregulate these pharma products and push them out in this way that was they print more money than anyone has ever printed in the history of the United States or the world. They crush demand by locking us all in our houses. This was all scripted before the virus, was dropping out, was running rampant. What's that?
What was it called? Event, what was the war game they ran?
Oh, right before August. COVID, Event 201.
Yeah. 201. Yeah. But this specific plan with Fink was the going direct plan. And this was done, this was, a plan. This was absolutely, they had to address this issue of the debt. How do you do it? well, let's print all this money, lock down the economy so that we crush inflation as much as possible by crushing demand. And then we use these trillions of dollars that has no ability to go into checkings accounts and into Main Street and use it to buy up all the assets in the world. And when you kind of explore and look at the people that were really there that built these things from a regulatory standpoint and a custody standpoint, these people are heavily connected to the intelligence state. Thiel specifically, and a lot of these people that actually have a huge role in the Trump administration. And so I think it was very obvious and telegraphed, specifically Trump, but maybe we haven't won yet. And there's still a huge war to be fought. And so I think that they are manufacturing that complacency, the same thing they did with Q. Going into the pandemic, to just get us all to sit in our chairs and be like, patriots are in control. They're arresting the pedos. Like, here we go. Did that really happen? Has that happened?
Some people on Twitter still think so.
Yeah, but like, how do these people fight? They fight with lawfare. This champion of free markets, Peter Thiel, this libertarian god here, who's really the guy kind of running a lot of these things. He took down Gawker using lawfare and suits after, the story is after they kind of released some personal stuff about his life. And maybe his sexual orientation and some stuff, but really it was because they published the Epstein list.
Yeah, the year they went after him was the year that Gawker, it was the first publication to make public the Epstein Black Book. And at the time, Peter Thiel was meeting with Epstein pretty consistently between 2014 and 2015. So hard to know, really, what the reason was. But people were definitely not happy that Black Book came out because the person who obtained it was actually Epstein's butler, and he was, killed off in prison in 2015, the same year. So, kind of complicated stuff. And as far as Peter Thiel being a free market libertarian, he's pretty open. Well, he's on video and in writings has said that he doesn't like free market competition. It's actually for losers. He thinks, and that his definition of a capitalist is someone who accrues capital. So someone that believes in free market capitalism but isn't a millionaire, to Peter Thiel, isn't really a capitalist very much. Like someone like Reid Hoffman, who backed Kamala heavily, for example, would be more of a capitalist to Peter Thiel than someone like yourself, Marty.
It seems like there was anybody who was at Diddy parties or on the list.
Well, I think there's also, it didn't just happen with Diddy. It also happened with Epstein. There's been a deliberate effort, in my opinion, to cultivate the perception that the only people that are sexually compromised or that are pedophiles in the United States are celebrities and Democrats only, when it is, if you look at the evidence, and I wrote a 1,000-page book that goes over the history of sexual blackmail operations, including those involving children, it's very clearly both parties. And probably no government was more guilty of that than the Reagan-Bush era, with the Franklin scandal and a lot of the other things that were, oversawn as part of that, or like Iran-Contra drug trafficking, helping facilitate BCCI, which the U.S. Senate report admits was also sex trafficking minors to elites of the United Arab Emirates, including prepubescent children. Right. So this is something that has consistently been both parties. And, the idea that it's only one partisan side, I think is very complicated and ultimately not true, and could potentially be used for troubling ends. And there's a lot of, things I could, I guess, add to that. But essentially, I don't really like that it's being treated as partisan when the historical record very clearly shows it's a bipartisan disease, and that both parties have been very compromised by it for a long time, that it's essentially something that was done through this unholy alliance, if you will, between organized crime and intelligence agencies, which, as I note a lot in my book with a lot of facts to back it up, you can't really tell where organized crime and intelligence agencies end and begin. They're, for all intents and purposes, the same. And so, and I think it's complicated too, that you have people like, this, figure named Chuck Johnson, who's very close to, Peter Thiel, actually had Peter Thiel become an FBI informant at his behest, openly saying that Jeffrey Epstein was actually a patriot and Ghislaine Maxwell should be released from prison, and things of that nature. Like, is there going to be, a rebrand or something, by media operatives that have ties, to the state of Israel, for example, that Epstein was also tied to, trying to rebrand their guy as someone that was just trying to keep the Dems from doing the wrong things or something like that. I don't know, but why is someone saying that? Personally, I find that stuff kind of concerning, and a lot of, hints from people like Megyn Kelly that we'll be hearing from Epstein really soon, and there's going to be a big twist in the story. I just really don't trust the partisan bent of that. Personally, I think it's going to be misused, and it doesn't fit with the facts, frankly. Is it true that there are very problematic people involved in these scandals that back Kamala? Absolutely. Absolutely. Reid Hoffman obviously being the most obvious, but it's fair to say that Peter Thiel and also Elon Musk, have their Epstein ties as well. It just hasn't been, of interest as much to people in certain media circles. But, there's definitely facts pointing to that. A lot of them I've discussed in my book. Some came out after my book was published, when a lot of these discovery documents from the USVI case against JP Morgan, as it related to Epstein, were, sort of released, at least aspects of them were, by the Wall Street Journal, which also illuminated the extent to which he met with Reid Hoffman. But, that was the first time that it was officially confirmed that Peter Thiel met extensively with Epstein previously. It was, I had to speculate about that for the purpose of my book, because there were plenty of indicators suggesting that was the case. Now we know it's the case. And there's a lot that hasn't come out, about Epstein. And there's still not a lot of interest in Epstein in particular, on the financial crime angle of that, which I think is really significant. And, the fact that they make it sort of this sensationalized, salacious, story, that it's, all about just these terrible sex acts and stuff. It's a lot bigger story, and there's not a lot of interest in going after it, I think, because a lot of the people implicated are some of the biggest people in Silicon Valley. Elon Musk, Sergey Brin, and Larry Page were all subpoenaed as part of that Epstein case. Tom Pritzker of the Pritzker family. And these are people that, play both sides of the political divide also. But they all seem to have that, behind them. And sometimes, it may not be convenient. You have Elon Musk going out saying like Reid Hoffman should be very afraid, about the information about Epstein coming out. But, as I said earlier, and as I've said on other podcasts, and as noted in my book, Elon Musk had business ties with Jeffrey Epstein and was subpoenaed as part of this, banking probe into the financing or his connections to JP Morgan and other things, which is not just the sex trafficking thing. It's also connected with the financial crime aspect of it, and, you don't hear this stuff discussed about Epstein. You don't hear mentions about Diddy teaming up with the Bronfman family or the Lauder family. He absolutely did. And there are connections of that, of course, to the Epstein scandal, as noted in my book. But again, it's a focus on sensationalism and trying to use it for partisan means. And ultimately, when we play those games, everyone ends up losing because we're not getting to the truth of the matter. And by not getting to the truth of the matter, we're unable to root out this evil from our society.
What was Fink saying? He was like, I'm sick of everyone talking about how this is the most important election. We work with both parties. Like, who gives a shit? He didn't say gives a shit, but
that is unfortunate. You have Kamala's economic team and Biden's economic team essentially being run by BlackRock executives. And then, when Trump was in office last time, Larry Fink had basically, BlackRock designed the U.S. fiscal response to COVID that they began implementing before a pandemic was even declared. And it resulted in one of the biggest, wealth transfers in American history, and printed more money than at any other time in U.S. history. And, that was BlackRock, and they're not going away. And the fact that Fink is like, we work with both administrations. I mean, they worked with Obama during 2008, they worked with Trump, and they worked with Biden, and would have worked with Kamala.
And you have to look at the lockdowns as it was fiscal policy to crush demand, to be able to print a bunch of money, give it to Wall Street, and let them buy everything up. If you actually think about the implications of that, they committed the greatest violation of human civil liberties, maybe arguably in human history that we, or certainly modern era. Right? They locked everybody in their homes, completely murdered the middle class, printed more money than anything. And after they had spent all of this time building out the euro dollar market, dollarizing the entire world, and then they inflated it, away, and it's going to continue to inflate away. And we're going to see the effects of this, for our entire lives. But this was a plan. This was done. Who was able to run the data for the implementation of Operation Warp Speed, the deregulation of, pharmaceutical products, who made billions and billions of dollars, and who got crushed and who got, in some cases literally killed. It's an absolute travesty. And this was done for money, and it was done, I would say, arguably as sort of a controlled demolition to force us all into the new financial system. I know that's controversial, and it's a kind of a step to make, to be like, wow, was this really all a plan? And I think it was, when you look at the treasury market, and you look at the repo market. This is a decades long, expansion of the monetary debt system. Let's dollarize everything. In the early 80s, we were the largest creditor in the world, and by 87, we were the largest debtor. Where did all that money go? And here we are with this huge populist movement running in. Trump has more of a mandate than ever. And he really was an essential part of allowing this coup and this robbery to happen, unfortunately. And the people around him are still a lot of those same people. And here they are. And if you really look at what the implications of what we should have learned from COVID era, for some reason, we're forgiving everybody that we just handed the keys to the castle to, for the role that they, in the expansion of the monetary supply and the expansion of the security state. And here we are. It's time to hold people accountable. I don't know why Trump gave Fauci a medal. I don't know why he gave him any power at all. I don't know why they deregulated pharmaceutical, red tape to speed things along. I don't know why they let Palantir run all, the data for this distribution. But now we're here. We have to learn from the immediate history. And we can't get sidetracked by these quick social media pivots and this feeling that we've won, when actually we were just robbed. Our entire generational wealth was, maybe not us because we hold some Bitcoin, right? But anybody that didn't hold Bitcoin before then and has been holding dollars, they really were robbed. Our parents were robbed, our grandparents, our uncles, or whatever. It's an incredibly nasty thing that happened, and it wasn't an accident in any way, shape, or form. It's just, I think Elon, he was building mRNA technology for the CureVac in Tesla factories. He's saying the science is unequivocal, huge proponent for vaccines and COVID insanity at the very beginning. Obviously, then he pivoted, as all these people did when it was no longer politically dangerous and it no longer really mattered. They all pivoted. Vivek, also heavily involved in mRNA stuff. There's so much pharmaceutical money and lobby in that little Avengers group of people that people are so fucking stoked about.
What concerns me about that is, okay, so in Trump's first term, he deregulated biotech extensively, mainly in terms of GMO crops, to the point that anti-GMO organizations and small farmers sued the Trump administration over the proliferation of GMO crops as a consequence of that policy. So there is a precedent for him sort of unchaining GMO development, and it's very possible that could happen in terms of medicine, since Operation Warp Speed arguably was that. Elon Musk, as Mark mentioned, invested in mRNA technology, but so is JD Vance, so is Vivek, and so are a lot of other people that extensively backed Trump.
So JD Vance is formidable enough to be a two-term president, okay? So if Trump is a one-term, JD's a two-term president, now you got 12 years of momentum. And this is to blame for what Barack Obama and what Fauci and what Biden and what Harris and what a lot of this establishment did during the 4 years during COVID. No one forgot that. There's a lot of people that didn't forget it. They are so angry. There is 14-year-old kids that are now 18 years old that will never forget how ninth grade was, permanently for the rest of their lives. I am 46 years old. I will never forget what it was like living in Iran when I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. Never, till today. I'm 46. I will never forget when Khomeini died for 3 hours, 2 hours. My mother can't find me. We're going all over the place. Everyone's panicking. Streets are riot. It's till today I can play That scene, I'll never forget that, right? That stays with you. So you're 14 years old. You mean to tell me I couldn't go to school? I couldn't see my friends. I'm at home. I'm around my mom. My mom's trying to go to work. We're getting into fights. My mom and dad are fighting all the time. This caused the divorce. You guys lost your restaurant that my grandfather ran for many times since the 40s and 50s. You did that to me. That's permanent. That's permanent fire in the belly that you cannot replace. Those kids are now 18. They're going to be 22, 26, 30. That army of why male voters, 18, young male voters are becoming more and more conservative is not because maybe they grew up in a conservative family, so they're not becoming more conservative. You made them feel like idiots. You made me feel like I'm abnormal for being a regular young man, a young male, right? A young boy who I am. What is so weird about me? So I think that revolution of strong men coming back up, you're going to see a lot of that the next 4, 8, 12, 16 years, and they're going to be heroes.
Now, wasn't a lot of those lockdowns that started with Trump as president?
Not the lockdowns. No, not he had what lockdowns did he do during Trump?
March 2020.
That's states, though. You can't put states. States, what they did with California, that's a state. What New York did, that's a state. That's up to the state. DeSantis here did it in Florida for 2 to 4 weeks. He opened it back up. I remember I was here. That was like but he's not the guy shutting it down. It's the states that are doing it.
Is it just me, or does it look really weird to see a grown man defending a man like Donald Trump, the man who proudly unleashed Operation Warp Speed onto the world? Patrick's own father was injected by that life-destroying poison, that military operation that was launched against his own father, and he's still supporting Donald Trump. Is there not something weird about that? And obviously I've been thinking about this a lot. There are some people who have done well in the current system, and they want to preserve the system we have. Joe Rogan, Tom Bilyeu, Patrick Bet-David, they've done very well under this system, and they are Trump supporters. Now, that makes perfect sense. I can understand it. There comes a point where you either jump ship or you're going to lose everything. And I'm surprised we haven't already reached that point. As you all know, I made a very big deal about, and I will continue to make a big deal about, what David Rogers Webb called the Great Taking. Essentially, he wrote a book outlining the evidence to prove that we actually no longer have property rights under the law. These people who think they're wealthy, the bankers are just letting them think that. But when the bankers want to take what they have, they'll just take it. And they'll use the police and the military to do it. And that's what's planned, and that's where we're going. If people like, and I forgot to mention Tucker Carlson, of course, Tucker Carlson, take these 4 guys, for example, Tucker Carlson, Patrick Bet-David, Tom Bilyeu, and Joe Rogan. They've all done very well under the current system. They have a lot of money, and they probably think that they're going to be able to keep that money. They might even have a secret deal with the politicians or even with the bankers themselves. If they're naive enough to believe that they won't be just chewed up and spat out when the time comes, that's what they're going to have to live with. But I can tell you that this evil death cult behind the central bankers, these families, they didn't spend the last 50 to 100 years manipulating every legal system on the planet to rob the people of our property rights. They didn't do all that to say, oh, but we'll look after you and we'll look after you and you'll be all right and you'll get to keep your money. They didn't do it because they want to look after people. They did it because they want to steal everything. And they're doing it through governments, through politics. If people are too slow to catch on to that, then, man, we got some bad times ahead. Like, things are going to get ugly. And the problem is, it's going to get ugly for masses of people before it gets ugly for these guys who have succeeded in the current system. And the same way I'm sitting here telling you now that these people who are supporting politics are actually working as the enemy of the masses. Like, I'm seeing it ahead of time, but all the Trump supporters out there, they're not going to be far behind me. They're all going to see it. Like, Trump's going to do what politicians do. They're all going to feel betrayed again. They're going to feel really stupid because politicians have been doing the same thing for like my entire life, at least 45 years. So I don't understand how people like Patrick think they can get away with this bowing down to politicians and the political system. And, you know, he says some things that are just like objectively wrong. Like, he just said then about kids becoming more conservative. That's the opposite, Patrick. You've got it backwards. You're conservative. Patrick Bet-David is conservative. He is trying to conserve the slavery system that we have by locking minds into politics. Yes, he is a conservative. The up-and-coming kids that he's talking about, these young men who were going to grow up and become a big problem for him, they're not conservative. They're the opposite of conservative. And that has nothing to do with the liberal left. That has to do with wanting to forge a new path. They don't want to go on the queer left path. And they certainly don't want to follow you and conserve the slavery system that we have. They want their own freedom and prosperity. And right now, the way Patrick is talking, he's actually standing in the way of that. And he has the power to do that for a little while longer. But he's going to have to grow out of this. Otherwise, the price that he pays will be everything he has. And we're going to come back to that because these guys ask some very bold questions. So I just want to finish this part about politics. It's my least favorite part. So just have a listen.
If Trump wins and Vance plays offense and Vance is more involved in having victories and Trump gives Vance certain responsibilities that he is the face winning, not Trump. If Trump is comfortable with Vance getting public victories, sometimes even more than him, if he's okay with that some of the credit goes to Vance, and he's not upset about it, Vance will go 8 years. But if all of a sudden Vance gets a little bit too much attention, and it rubs him the wrong way, and Vance gets a little bit too cocky that he's doing it, and it gets to his head, even a subtle smirk, when somebody asks the question and says the following: if you want to find out a divisive question to ask Vance, you know what it is? You ready for the divisive question? Hey, JD, a lot of people are saying you're the president of the United States and President Trump is the vice president. A lot of people are saying you're the one that's doing all this stuff right now. It's because of you. How do you feel about that? If he smiles for half a second and President Trump is at Mar-a-Lago and sees that Trump, now you have division. These are some of the things you got to be ready for, because the games are going to be pinned to pin Trump against JD. If they're able to find a way to pin Trump against JD, and now Trump is not happy about the attention that JD is getting, Vance is not going to get reelected because he'll be another Mike Pence. Trump's not going to let that happen. JD has to realize you are not the alpha. He has to give all the praise and edification to Trump the next 4 years. Zero taking credit. If he does that, the head honcho at the top is going to give him the biggest endorsement for 2028, and he'll get it. If it's not Vivek or somebody else, but he'll be one of those guys. But I think if that takes place, you got Elon, you got Bobby, you got Tulsi, you got Tucker. If all of these things are taking place, Ooh, this is not good for these guys for the next 12. They missed the mark on podcasting.
No, Patrick, they missed absolutely nothing. The central bankers and the Sabbatean Francus death cult have installed their puppet. They got their boy in power. They missed nothing.
They missed the mark on the way they presented their argument during COVID. This may not just be 4 years. It may be 4, 8, 12 years.
I just want you to notice the amount of mental energy that Patrick is putting into politics. It's like the same amount of mental energy that I try to put into visualizing a new golden age and seeing everybody enjoy the wealth and abundance that is available to us. And I am committed to those thoughts and that vision day and night. It looks to me like that's the same amount of dedication that Patrick Bet-David has to politicians and their offsiders, like these puppets. He even went as far as to call Donald Trump an alpha.
Trump's not going to let that happen. JD has to realize you are not the alpha. He has to give all the praise and edification to Trump the next 4 years.
Donald Trump is a bankrupt puppet. How do you see an alpha there? Just because he's been installed as president, I mean, if anything, that's how you know he's a puppet, because they would not put anybody in the role of president if they were not controlled and controllable. That's how you get that job. That's why this system needs to end, because it's a rotten throughout to the core. It's finished. But Patrick is so dedicated to it. And I suppose you can understand that if you've made considerable wealth within this system, that you're going to want to conserve it. But you're going to make yourself the enemy of the entire global population if you do that. Then that's foolish. You don't need to do that. You can actually have even more prosperity by helping to bring an end to it. And this is like the slave mentality, this idea that you have to do things the way they've been handed to you because that's all you're allowed to do. That's a slave mindset. That's not how it is. We get to choose exactly how we want things to go. And people who are deliberately trying to funnel minds into these political puppets are, I'm trying to wake them up. Like, this is going to get ugly. You don't want to be that guy. All right, you're that way now. That's fine. But you have to outgrow this, because where it's going to lead you is to becoming the enemy of everyone. And when everybody's lost their property rights, which has already happened, that's already happened under the law, where do you think you're going to go where you're going to be able to safely take your family out for dinner and just live life? Where? You want to live in a gated community? How's that going to be? What kind of life is that going to be? Like, you can't hold on to this system, because the people who are trying to hold on to this system are going to become the target of the 99% of people who have been impoverished by it. You have to get on to the right side of history, and shuffling minds into politics is exactly the wrong side of history. Now, just to really get clear about one of Patrick's major misconceptions here, the idea of what conservative politics is.
Actually, so we've had a lot of people on the left, a lot of people on the right on our show. We've been requested one time to cut out some of the conversation, and that came from somebody on the left. Never heard anything like that from anybody on the right.
We just had the recent one with The Rock. When I put The Rock's interview, I asked him a lot of questions about. I said, "Who do you think your followership is? You think they're more conservative or more on the left?" I said, "Because you're pro-military, right? Conservative. Moana's a family movie, conservative. You're WWE, conservative. You're a badass, conservative. Working out, conservative. you're conservative.
I mean, you could almost laugh at that. That actually is funny. How have any of those things got anything to do with trying to preserve the current system? Working out, world wrestling. What on earth does working out have to do with conservative politics? What does being a badass have to do with conservative politics? You're talking about opposites here. Anybody who's a real badass does not want to conserve slavery. They want to fight to bring an end to slavery.
What is conservatism? Broadly construed, conservatism is a social, cultural, and political doctrine that emphasizes the value of traditional institutions and practices. In fact, conservatism seeks to promote and to preserve traditional social institutions and practices. And it is important to note that conservatives tend to favor institutions and practices that guarantee stability and evolved gradually. The central tenets of conservatism may vary in relation to the status quo of the culture and civilization in which it appears. For example, in Western culture, conservatives seek to preserve a range of institutions such as organized religion, parliamentary government. In The Devil's Dictionary, the American writer Ambrose Bierce cynically, but not inappropriately, defined the conservative as a statesman who is enamored of existing evils, as distinguished from the liberal, who wishes to replace them with others.
This is the most outstanding definition of both conservatives and liberals that has ever been verbalized on planet Earth.
Defined the conservative as a statesman who is enamored of existing evils, as distinguished from the liberal, who wishes to replace them with others.
Don't both sides always say they're voting for the lesser of two evils? One side is always seeking to force their version of evil over the other side's version of evil. Condemning your fellow man under a system of left-right politics is pure evil. If you're trying to hang on to this slavery system, you're not a badass, you're a puppet, you're a useful idiot, you're a tool of the establishment. So, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, that's probably what he is. I mean, that's what all these people are. And I mean, I'm not saying this to insult anybody. I don't want to insult anybody. I'm saying this to warn people, don't stay in this camp, because the bankers and the politicians, they're your enemy. Whether you realize it or not, they will take everything you have and literally leave you in prison or just murder you. They don't care. Nobody has any value to them. They torture their own family members, so they don't care about you. At this point in time, you have an audience, so you can get on the side of your audience so that they will care about you. That would be a wise move, because if you don't get on the side of your audience, then they are also going to become your enemy. The politicians and the bankers are already the enemy of everyone, but you don't want to also become the enemy of the impoverished masses. That would be really foolish, and that's what these people are doing. I mean, there is no amount of money in the world, no amount of protection. There is nothing that could make that a viable strategy for anyone. It's the only people who could see that as a viable strategy are those who have been sexually compromised. They know that there is video of them raping or murdering children, and for that reason, they have to comply. Otherwise, the videos will be leaked and they will be made the enemy of the masses, which is a dangerous place to be. I can't say that I know for sure, but I don't imagine that people like Patrick Bet-David and Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan and Tom Bilyeu, I don't imagine that they would have been involved in any sexual perversions to have allowed such evidence to to exist in the world. So there is really no good reason for them to be doing this. So in my mind, this is really quite confusing. I don't know if maybe he feels that, not just Patrick, but all these guys that I'm talking about, maybe they feel that they have to do this because if they don't, then the politicians and the bankers will know that they're planning something. Or maybe they really are just short-sighted, narrow-minded, and immoral. I don't know. I don't want to make a prediction, but it's got to be one or the other. They're either doing this to keep their plans covert, or they're doing it because they're just really greedy, ruthless people who don't give a fuck about anyone but themselves. Whatever the case may be, the next question that the host asks, a question that I would never ask anybody, and I've never even looked this up for anybody about his wealth, how much wealth he has and where it's stored. He asked the question, so I'll play it for you because it's very relevant to the ending of this video.
On the topic of your own personal investments, you've also mentioned that your net worth's like $500 million. How would you divide that up? Where's the money located? Is it like what percent gold, maybe Bitcoin?
So we just bought an 11-acre building, cash, $25.2 million. On the airport, 2 hangars, brand spanking new. This property was bought in 2018 for $25 million. Guy put $7 million of upgrades.
All right, well, I would never ask a question like that, but since he asked it, I think it really gives us a great opportunity because I know that a lot of people hate to see anybody having success. I despise people like that. I think they are their own worst enemy. If you can't look at successful people and see what you can learn from them, then life is not going to be good for you. You know, you don't have to worry about what other people have. You have to worry about what you do with your time. That's what matters to you. And what other people do with their time, if it works out well for them, see what you can learn. And for those who don't use their time effectively, you can even take lessons from them too. I would hate for people to see me as one of these guys that dislikes people who are successful. I admire people who are successful, and I would never criticize Patrick for having business success in business. To me, I want to look at what he's done right and learn something from him. So more power to him. The point that I want to get to is, what is he doing for other people? Now, I'm sure he has a lot of employees. That doesn't count. They're working for you. When somebody does work for you and you pay them, even if you pay them well, you have a business arrangement. That is not an act of service because you're serving each other. So it's still a valuable part of life. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying it's separate to what is Patrick doing as an act of service to others. Now, he probably contributes some money towards charity and what have you.
Who hear stories like this, and we support a lot of charities behind closed doors that we don't publicly endorse because we don't want people to, there's certain things that we will support and nobody knows about because, we are.
Okay, that's fine. But why did God give him 7 million subscribers? He's got this platform to reach people. Throughout his life, he has been receiving information from the field that has been telling him to speak publicly and build this audience. He's been receiving this information to do what he's been doing for a reason. It's not just to line his own pockets. That's not how this creation works. Yes, God wants us to be successful and secure in our own lives. There's no question about that. But he wants us to be successful in our own lives, so that we can support others who are less successful or who have had whatever disadvantages, of which there are many in the current system. And so what is Patrick doing to help those people that need help? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, okay, so if he's got 500 million, he should give 250 million to charity. That's not at all what I'm saying. A man who has been able to earn $500 million has earning capacity. He has God-given abilities. And in my view, the way somebody like Patrick, who has been given these abilities and these circumstances, the way that somebody like that is to serve is to see how many lives he can impact for the better, how many lives he can improve in the most economically viable way. It might not take but a fraction of that wealth to put some systems in place that actually help people, you know? I mean, let me give you two examples. One example would be organizing homeless people to actually do something productive in the world. And with that productive activity, they could help to pay back a small investment that Patrick could put into some inexpensive housing somewhere. Get people doing things to take care of themselves again, set up some kind of a system. Wouldn't have to be enormously expensive. He wouldn't have to do it by himself. He could go to other wealthy people to put this together. That would be one way of providing service to others. Another way would be like what I have been trying to do, except it's very different for Patrick and I, because Patrick already has an audience. So he could use his platform to help manifest my idea into the world, bring podcasters together to show where the real political power is, so that the police and military will stop taking orders from the world's most evil, demonic monsters. You know, that would not even involve spending any of his own wealth. It would involve using his God-given abilities in an act of service to the wider world. They're just two examples, and the examples are literally endless. There's millions of ways that you can try to help others, and if you don't realize that that's what you're here to do, then you just haven't yet understood what life is about. This is a part of the spiritual journey. I couldn't have told you this 10, even 5 years ago. I couldn't have told you this. But now I'm able to tell you this. It has taken a lot of suffering. I have not had an easy life. It's taken me a lot of suffering to realize what the spiritual journey is about. And of course, I've had a lot of help. I mean, you guys have been with me on this journey on my channel. You can see I started out this channel totally locked into the Antichrist Christianity bullshit. You know, I thought that Jesus Christ was going to come back and save us. Like, I'm not saying that you have to serve others out of obligation when you don't want to do it. I'm saying that's where you will get fulfillment from. That's how you find meaning. Unless you're a psychopath that only cares about yourself, that's how normal people are able to take the most reward from life, from their activities and their choices, is when they see that they've helped somebody else who needed help. And I mean, we're living in a world where there's just so much opportunity to do that. There's so many people suffering. There's so many different ways you can help people. Anybody who has any level of wealth, who is not actively trying to improve lives for others, for people they don't know, it's not going to be good for them. They're going to have to go through more lifetimes. Every lifetime you go through, you have to meet your new parents. They're going to die. Your siblings will die. You'll lose friends. You'll lose pets. Life is suffering. The physical world is brutal. Every individual really needs to make as much spiritual growth in each lifetime as we possibly can, because failing to do so, you're just going to have to do it again. And I mean, this is not my opinion. There are literally thousands of near-death experiences. There's just so much evidence about how consciousness works. I'm telling you, like somebody like Patrick, anybody who is locked into politics must not even know what meditation is, meaning that they don't even know themselves. They don't even know who they are. The only thing they know is the noise, the thoughts, the thoughts and the images that play through their mind from the time they wake up until the time they go to sleep. Those conscious thoughts are rolling like a movie script. And they think that's who they are. That's not who you are. That's just the surface layer stuff that you take on during this physical incarnation. But you need to learn to quiet that down so that you can actually get to know who you are, the real you, the observer underneath that. And when you connect with that part of you, you will not be trying to shuffle minds into politics. You will actually see that that is really quite an evil thing to do, because a lot of people are very susceptible to it. And if you're advanced enough to have outgrown that, then you really need to be helping others to outgrow it. You can't be deliberately working to engineer minds into politics. That is evil behavior. Which is what brings me to my final point about Patrick Bet-David and the way he looks at himself. Check this out.
So, by the way, today, I'm 46 years old. I have lived a life of 100 average men combined, not in an arrogant way. Also the nasty side, the ugly side, the tough side. I've lived an incredible life. If today I'm gone, you have no idea. There's no complaining. I'd like 50 more years. But if he says, no, it's done, dude, let's roll. I'll go upstairs and play backgammon with whoever's there, and I'll go clean some clouds and chill out. And what job you have for me up here? I don't know if there's podcasting in heaven. If there is, I'm sure I'll do a podcast. I don't know if I'm selling insurance because you don't have any need for life insurance. You're already dead, right? So it's going to be confusing what I'm going to be selling. But yeah, it's a cultural question you're asking, and that's my answer to that question.
Love it. Thank you so much.
All right, this is the part I've been looking forward to. Talking about heaven and Patrick, and it's obvious that he's being sort of he's being jocular about that. He's saying he'll play backgammon and clean some clouds, and he's imagining that heaven is a place where he will take his body and his thoughts. That's not how it works. Don't believe me? Just practice meditation. Just do it for like 20 minutes a day. Try to do at least 5 days a week. Just do it for a week or two. You have to meet the person that's underneath all that noise. That you're not going to be taking those thoughts with you to heaven. You're not going to be taking this podcast character that you have built up in this physical world to heaven. That's not you. It's not you. It won't go with you. This is what the church has done to people. It's got people believing that you don't have to worry about this world because you're not going to be here. So you just do what you want to do, because when your time's up, and just leave it to us. We've got everything under control here. You just live your life, because when you go, it's one and done. This is what the church has done. This is a lie. This is a blatantly obvious lie to anybody who knows themselves. to anybody who practices meditation, to anybody who's studied near-death experiences, to anybody who understands consciousness, to anybody who cares enough about our reality to just do some research, to look into it. What is consciousness? How does it work? How is this physical world made manifest? It's all a projection of our consciousness. Religion has stolen the will from people to improve the world that we live in. And religion has done that through a lie by convincing people that you don't have to deal with this place. When your time's up, and you'll go to heaven. This is what religion has pushed. They've got the Muslims believing they're going to get 72 virgins. I mean, where do they think these virgins are going to come from? You don't think that, I mean, all of a sudden, what? Couples are going to be producing 72 women for every man. Where are they going to come from? You know, this is rubbish. This idea of heaven. Let's just think about this logically for a minute. If heaven was a place in the clouds where everything was just heavenly and blissful, there is a place in consciousness where we can go to experience bliss. A lot of people go there. Many go there daily. It seems to me to be a bit of an escape, and you have to be quite good at meditating to be able to get there. I haven't even been able to get there, but I listen to people. I learn from other people who go to this blissful place through meditation. That's heaven. The Bible tells us the kingdom of heaven is within. But let's say it was this other place outside of ourselves that we go to when we leave here. If it was so blissful, how long would we want to be there? How long would heaven be heaven to anybody? You know, I talk about this and I play clips, relevant clips, in my video number 85. I really encourage everybody to watch this. I think it's one of the most helpful videos I've made. Nobody would want to stay in heaven if it actually is the way people imagine it, because you would be bored out of your mind. You can't have everything blissful all the time, because that's boring. Patrick even himself is saying there that he will want to go and clean some clouds, play backgammon, and start a podcast. So obviously, heaven cannot be a blissful place. You need challenges. You need something to do. That's why it can be right here. You have to create it here. But according to this video that I've just reacted to, Patrick is not interested in creating heaven here. He's interested in locking people into the current slavery system.
There's nothing like unfair, what's the word? Unfair punishment. So you hear these stories of, guys that went to jail for 20 years for selling a dime bag.
I know. I worked in the prisons.
Why did that guy go to jail for a dime bag, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or people that went to jail that didn't kill anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else blamed them. And, hey, he's going to go in, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are devastating. You ruined someone's life, their youth. You stole their 20s and their 30s.
That's right.
And they're going to get out in their mid-40s, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you need law and order so the big guy cannot bully the little guy. You need that. Unfortunately, because we have certain lobbyists and because we have certain politicians that are for sale, predominantly on the left, that are for sale.
Well, no, don't say that.
No,
my
it's the
perpetrators
truth.
were from both sides.
Yeah, no, but
absolutely, no. You cannot say predominantly.
I said
you don't
politicians.
know.
I said politicians. It's cheaper to buy the people on the left than the ones on the right.
You don't know
Presidents who become presidents.
You don't know that either.
Presidents who become presidents, who funded their own campaign are tougher to buy than those who were funded 100% by donors, like the Clintons, like the Obamas, like the Carters, like others.
I'm saying that you don't know that.
No, it's very simple.
That was a clip from this video, which Patrick just dropped during the time that I spent editing this video that you're watching. Notice how he started out that short clip talking about unfair punishment. And then he went on to talk about politicians who are funded by lobbyists.
Take a look at the Republican Party and its, I guess, top donor, Miriam Adelson, who has pledged $100 million through a super PAC to Donald Trump, basically declaring that Trump let her do whatever Israel wanted thanks to her money. And this is at a Stop Anti-Semitism golf club event, I think at Mar-a-Lago.
President is Donald Trump. He promised to recognize Jerusalem and to move the embassy to Jerusalem. Promise kept. He promised to withdraw from Iran nuclear deal, and promise kept. He promised to bring peace between Israel and Arab nations. Promise kept. And all in Golan Heights, that was a big gift. He promised Golan Heights, and he recognized.
Well, I'm glad he keeps all his promises to his Israeli donors, because now we're going to get to watch and see how well he keeps his promises that he made to the American people.
So it's so elucidating to hear her say all that in an Israeli accent. Someone who is the widow of the late casino billionaire Sheldon Adelson, who dominated the Republican Party as a Zionist donor. And a scandal emerged from that event, but that wasn't the scandal. That wasn't the scandal that the media chose from that event. That itself, to me, should be the scandal. I mean, we're talking about the biggest foreign meddling operation in history taking place right before our eyes. The scandal was that Donald Trump declared that the Medal of Honor he gave to Miriam Adelson, Israeli super donor, who also helped sponsor whose late husband also helped sponsor the career of Benjamin Netanyahu, that Medal of Honor was better than Medal of Freedom. Medal of Freedom was better than the medals of honor given to U.S. troops. And, the subtext there that the corporate media, CNN and MSNBC, refused to convey to the public is that Sheldon Adelson is someone who said that he regretted fighting for the U.S. Army and that he wished he had fought for the Israeli army instead. I mean, these are Israeli cutouts pushing an Israel first policy that's being marketed to low info Republican voters as America first. And that's the scandal, but no one said that. I mean, it's pretty shocking.
And so like the media covered half the scandal. The media covered the scandal about Trump insulting the veterans, but they omitted the part about Trump insulting the veterans at the behest of a pro-Israel donor. That part was just completely minimized because they're in on that. They also do Israel's bidding as well, and they do exactly what Trump does, which is basically engage in corruption for their own enrichment, for the benefit of Israel and the detriment of everybody else, including veterans who have to go off, and now and soldiers who have to go off to the Middle East right now to fight Israel's wars. All these people who are now being deployed to the Middle East to defend Israel from a potential retaliation from Iran and its allies. Did any of them sign up to go defend Israel in the Middle East? Like, is that the oath you have to take when you sign up to be a soldier? It should be now, basically. You should have to basically take an oath now to defend Israel, because that would at least be honest for the Pentagon to do, given that's what they force these young people to go do.
Donald Trump is 100% owned. I've been writing to Patrick about this for a long time. But notice how he started out that clip talking about unfair punishment.
There's nothing like unfair, what's the word? Unfair punishment. So you hear these stories of, guys that went to jail for 20 years for selling a dime bag.
In the same video, this is a video about this lady who is exposing satanic ritual abuse that she was a victim of between the ages of 6 and 11. In the exact video that he says he's against unfair punishment, he shares this tweet that he dropped on the same day that he made this video.
I tweeted this 2 hours before you and I went live. I said, is this too extreme of an idea? Any illegal immigrant who commits a crime in America should face 5 times the punishment of someone who is here legally, especially a U.S. citizen, and an automatic death penalty found guilty of rape, murder, or, drug, child trafficking. I have zero tolerance for this when it comes down to somebody taking advantage of a kid or any.
Now notice the word drug in here. Everything about this is fine for me, except for the word drug. What Patrick has done there by including the word drug in that tweet, he's telling everybody that he believes if 2 people want to engage in a voluntary transaction, that he thinks armed thugs that work for the state are allowed to step in there and steal those possessions violently because they're drugs, and that's okay, and he's happy to live in that world. I guarantee you, he will come back born into a family who needs to sell drugs to survive. Whatever it takes for him to learn that no man has authority over another man, that's what he will experience. And I'm telling you this from the position of somebody who was born into a world without a mother. My very first memories, I must have been about 3 years old. I was crying. I was upset because I saw the other kids at kindy had mums and I didn't have a mum, and I didn't understand why I didn't have a mum, and I used to cry about it. And I remember my sisters would tell me that your mum's in heaven and she's still, watching over you. So from the very start of my life, heaven was something that I wholeheartedly believed in. I never questioned it. So for me to be talking to you about the idea of heaven in this way, it's not something that I just dreamt up. It's been 45 years having that same belief system that Patrick has and processing my way through that to now where I can tell you it's not logical. It doesn't make sense for heaven to be the idea that it's sold to us as. So now I'll play another clip for you.
You see, I believe that politics on the whole are there to cause division at this point. So, and I notice how the division has sharpened in the last years. And so that is why.
Who's done that, though? Who's done that? Think about who's done that.
Well,
if you're pretty smart, okay, you've been around, who do you think's done that? Who has the ultimate power?
Well, I would say that the people that I was used by, they wanted to control not just their slaves, but they wanted to control
who?
Everybody.
But how were they able to silence or get their message out there? What tool did they use in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s?
In the 70s, pedophilia was, for example, sold quite a bit. There was a lot that was very,
yeah, but where I was going with this is they did it by controlling the media.
Yeah,
so who
the
controls
media,
the media?
But there's also social media.
Well, social media is
because the
controlled.
tech companies are also controlled, aren't
sure,
they?
I know they are, but who are they controlled by? Who? The only guy that owns it that's conservative possibly is a guy named Elon who used to be a Democrat. He left when they realized they're insane. They've lost their minds.
That's one person.
But everybody else is on the other side. So
this lady is very sharp. She sees politics for what it is, and Patrick just seems to be willfully clueless. Like, he doesn't want to see that left and right, it's the same animal. He thinks that the left is the enemy, even though the list of criminals on the right is almost as long. What's the difference? It's not about the left or the right. It's the system that's completely rotten throughout. But look how committed Patrick is to this left-right paradigm. Imagine Patrick understands God's law perfectly well. I guarantee you he understands God's law because I've gone to great lengths to get that across to him. Imagine he's got 7 million people listening to him and he's never told anybody about God's law, but he's working this hard to shuffle minds into right-wing politics, knowing how God's law works. Yet he's happy for innocent people, innocent because they didn't hurt anyone, they're just trafficking drugs, to be violently assaulted and murdered by the state. And this is a man that expects to go to heaven. Does this make sense to anybody? Would you want to be in heaven with people who thought that way, who knew about God's law and kept it a secret? And I don't understand how Patrick can't see it. That's why there's a part of me that's wondering if he's just doing what he has to do to cooperate with the rotten system until everything's in place to end it. Because we can easily end it. We can easily end it. If people in the media are making connections with the police and military, it's going to be shut down, no problem. But if the people in the media are still working to boost politicians and that's their plan, man, we are really fucked. Like, we're in big trouble. So with that being the case, and assuming that Patrick uses his 7 million something subscribers purely for his own self-enrichment, and he never uses that blessing, that gift of creation that he has, that he is the beneficiary of. He never uses that to help others in a meaningful way, in a way that actually will really help them to prosper. And he carries on this path, and he doesn't use any portion of his wealth and assets to create systems that will help others. I mean, I don't even, if you were to ask me what I think he should do, I wouldn't tell him to go do that. I would tell him to use his platform to help us get free from this political system, this slavery system, these dark ages that we're all locked into. That's what I would say he needs to be doing. But let's say he decides not to do that. Let's say he died right now. He seems to think he would go to heaven. But if people like that were allowed into heaven, how long would it be heaven? You see what I mean? If people could go to heaven who don't actually think about others, who just worry about themselves and their own, which is themselves. Like, you care for your own because if something happens to them, it hurts yourself. So people who are only living their lives for themselves cannot be a part of heaven because it wouldn't be heaven. You see the logic in that? Heaven would not be heaven if selfish people existed there. You know, that's the whole point. That's why we're here, is to learn to serve others, to care for others. When you reach that place in consciousness, that's when you could actually be a part of heaven, because you wouldn't bring fear and greed and selfishness. Heaven would not be heaven if fear and greed and selfishness were just invited in there. So you don't need to believe anything that I'm saying. You just need to think these things through. I hope Patrick has another 50 years too, because at this rate, he's really going to need it, because I can guarantee you, I would bet my life on it. If Patrick was to die today, he would come up in another family that he would be the subject of the poverty that he has allowed to perpetuate. That's how it works. This is not my opinion. This is like, I have spent the last 10 years of my life trying to understand the reality that we live in. I have studied consciousness at great length and listened to all the brightest minds on it. I've come to understand what the religions are all about. I've invested a huge portion of myself into the purpose of this life, the purpose of suffering, why we suffer. Everything about this physical reality that we experience, it's all about learning how to create heaven on earth. That's what we're here to do. To care for each other, to help each other, those who have more privilege, to help those who have less. I mean, privilege is not a good word because, nobody's given me anything, but I'm definitely more better off than some other people, so it's the job of those of us who are better off to help those who are worse off, is what I'm saying. And when you take that on as a part of your being, as who you are, that's what will create a golden age. That's what will create heaven on earth. And if you are actively doing that with your life, with your time, if you invest enough of your life and enough of your time into helping to manifest heaven on earth, then your being level consciousness, who you are, is advanced enough to be able to say you could have a place in a heavenly realm. You wouldn't ruin it, is the point that I'm getting at. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Heaven cannot be heaven if everybody is invited in there. You have to get your consciousness to a certain level of selflessness and fearlessness before you can have any place there. You don't need a degree to figure that out. You just have to think about how long heaven would be heaven if every selfish, greedy person was living there. That would not be heaven for me. I wouldn't want to go there. I live in a world that's like that, and I'm doing everything I can to change it. So there's no way in the world I would want to go to a heaven that invites all those people in. And, we have to help other people to see that this is what it's about. Shuffling minds into politics is creating hell on earth. And the ruling class, they are really taking leaps and bounds towards the ugliest dystopia that most people can't even imagine. But you don't have to imagine it. You can read about it. You can learn about it. You can look into the great taking and find out what's happened to our property rights. And, your body is your property. That's the first piece of property that we all own. So property rights are everything, because property rights are the rights that you own your own body. When you lose property rights, you lose everything. You've got hell on earth. And that's already happened under the law. It just hasn't manifested physically yet. But we're literally balancing on a nice edge right now. The economies of the world have been absolutely destroyed with the counterfeiting that they've done ever since the COVID hoax. We are living on a knife's edge, and at any time they could collapse the system. And if podcast media hasn't gotten organized by then into a really powerful organization, the police and military are just going to go out there and harvest all the wealth of the world for the central bankers. And podcasters will have let that happen. The impoverished people of the world are just going to eat them up. And I don't want to see that happen. So I know I've said some things here that could be seen as, hurtful or insulting, but I think you can see that that's not my intention. I really just want to help Patrick and anybody else who thinks like Patrick. I want to help those people to see that if that's really the path that they're on, that they are setting themselves up for a lot more suffering. You know, suffering is a tool. It forces you to learn lessons. And if you've got a lot of wealth and you still haven't learned that you have a responsibility to those that have less than you, then you're going to come up against more suffering, because that's the lesson you have to learn. If you can take it from me, then you don't have to go through the suffering yourself. You will literally be spared that suffering by the universe, by God, because you will have taken the lesson. If you don't take the lesson from me, you're going to have to come up against it yourself. So, you know, take it or leave it. I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. Even if I was to die today, I could guarantee you I will come back into a better life the next time round. And I'm pretty sure that all these people that are supporting politics, if they were to die today and they did not use their millions of followers to help relieve us of this slavery, and they suddenly died, man, they're going to come back into like a hell even worse than mine. You know, don't let that happen. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm trying to save you from building your own hell here. You know, I hope you can see that. I'm trying to help, and that's all I got. I've really talked a lot in this video, so I'm pretty exhausted now. I appreciate you staying with me all the way through. I've got a number of things in mind that I want to be talking about and sharing with you, but I'm not going to go into that now. This has got long enough. I'll look forward to being with you again in the next video. God bless everyone. See you soon.